Hi everyone, I'm Jay Villar here at New Community Farm, and today we're going to be talking about harvesting and drying your herbs. So we are in the late September, so as the season goes within our garden, especially our learning garden, we're not especially planting anything, and what we're going to be trying to do and thinking about for the rest of the season is how can we get the most out of all the hard work that we all did this past year and preserve that work to extend beyond what's going to be in the ground for our flavoring for the winter and early spring. So what all of that means is trying to preserve and use nature to our advantage in that preservation process for herbs and vegetables that can do that. So specifically today, we're going to be talking about how to look at our herb garden and our herbs to preserve it for future use. So I for certainly have been enjoying all of the fresh herbs this past growing season, putting it into my recipes and my tomato soups and my tomato sauces, adding depths of flavor with like pesto, with basil. But as now the seasons start to turn, the way to do that is to really think about preserving that in a way that extends it beyond just pulling it out of the ground and adding it to your recipes. So I'm going to be demonstrating what you're going to be needing for harvesting. I'm going to be talking about the tools that you're going to be needing to get in order to properly preserve your herbs, and then I'm going to be demonstrating a couple of ways in which you could use your space to preserve your herbs and how to tell when it's going to be ready. So let's start. So the first thing that you're going to be needing is some sort of harvesting kind of bucket or bowl or something that you can carry around with you with your garden. So I got this fun little big old red bowl. It matches my shirt and my hat, so which is specifically why I got it. And we're going to just find some of the herbs that we've been growing in our garden. Obviously here we have our flower bed, and the first big herb that we have is our big sage bush. So sage is something that grows year after year, so you don't necessarily plant it. This is way before my time, so whoever started the sage bush is gonna really enjoy it for the future, because I've been enjoying it. And all I'm going to be looking for are the leaves that are still green. So as you can notice here, kind of like nature has been doing her course, and all of these kind of like yellow spots and kind of like sunspot leaves. These are not the leaves that I want to hold on to when I'm looking for preserving herbs. So what I'm looking for are really still the freshest leaves that the plant has to offer, and identifying kind of where those spots are. And typically, in most cases, you'll still find them as photosynthesis works, trying to get as most sun as you possibly can, and really kind of avoiding these kind of like dead leaves here on the bottom. These are not going to give you any flavor whether you use them now or later. So all I'm really going to do is just find and sort of cut the herb as best I possibly can to kind of still hold on to it. I'm going to put in my little harvest bucket here and just give a few examples. And if you can notice, as gingerly as I'm trying to harvest, I'm trying not to actually touch the leaves because that's where all of the essential oils are of the leaves. So I'm trying not to get it onto my hand, so it's as much of an abundance on the leaves as you possibly can. So I can obviously do this all day long, looking for as much herbs with the sage as I possibly could find. Obviously we have more sage here, and here we have a big old thyme bush. And again, I'm just going to be kind of looking for as much of the freshness as I can. These are still flowering, So they're not going to be as potent as it was if it wasn't flowering, because these are now kind of going to seed. But I do have some examples of some really good thyme that was on the farm, but just kind of want to give you just a demonstration of kind of what you're going to be looking for when you harvest your herbs. And then we have our mint patch here. So again, when I look for herbs to harvest, I'm looking for the ones that are really still abundantly green and of the darkest color. So this is still, yeah. So if you can smell through the lens, it really smells like some really great fresh mints. But you know, as we can see here, you know, this is kind of flowering and does not give any kind of real fragrance that the fresher mint has to offer. So I'm just going to look for kind of some examples, and even if it's the herbs that have loose leaves that aren't as great on the bottom, I'm just going to discard them. And mint is a ground herb, so it really spreads out, and you know, this is for sure going to come back in abundance next year when we have more of our season sort of in full go. But you know, what we're going to do is kind of just give just a few sprigs of herbs here. So I have mint that can be used for teas and different flavoring. Thyme that is really great for, you know, additional flavor with chicken or sauces. And we have our sage that is really great in like veggie stews and broths. That really gives sort of like different flavors. So if you choose to use it now or in the future, it still kind of give me a lot of that same flavor. So that's just an example of what it looks like to harvest the herbs. Now I'm going to meet you over at the kitchen, the picnic table, and show you all the things that you're going to be needing in order for you to start preserving your herbs and what method to do so. So now we are back at the picnic table with our station of what we need to do and the tools that we need to have in order for us to preserve our herbs properly. Now there are a couple of trains of thought with herb preservation, and I just want to kind of discuss that with you real quick. So people have been preserving herbs for generations, and our current generation has now added tools in order for that herb preservation to occur that much more faster if you don't want to use traditional methods. And one of those ways is a dehydrator. Now, a dehydrator it's an appliance that kind of sucks out the moisture within a certain food, or in this case, an herb, and leaves the sort of the property so that you could keep it longer than you would, because there's no hydration or moisture in it. So think of like kale chips are a great example of when people use a dehydrator to make kale chips or banana chips or beet chips. So herbs are a way in which it fast forwards the drying process. So once it's dry, then you put it into whatever container that you're going to be using for your spices throughout your winter and spring season. But we don't have a dehydrator, and if you don't have a dehydrator, then I want to make this as specific to you as possible. So if you don't have a dehydrator, there are a couple of methods that you can use. You can use the string method, or you can use the paper bag method. And I'm going to be talking about both and the pros and cons of each. So the first method that we're going to be talking about is a string method. Now, this is the most popular method used to preserve your herbs. So all you're going to need is a piece of string. So you can use like butcher string, This is just kind of farm string that we have like on the farm. You need a piece of scissors and some tape. So with the string method, all you're going to do is just kind of cut a piece of string, and we'll show you what that will be used for. If you have great scissors, that would be a much easier cut. And we're going to take a few sprigs of our rosemary. So I harvested these rosemary sprigs earlier today, just as an example. And when you preserve your herbs, you want to make sure that there's enough airflow when you tie it, so that the herbs that are in the middle aren't getting sort of bunched up and not getting that airflow for that drying method. And you simply just take the herbs and you wrap it around, and all you do is make a little knot. And then you bring it to the other side, make a little knot so it's nice and tight. And I'm just going to seal it with one more knot. So I'm sure there's fancier ways to make knots with your herbs, but right now the only test that I need the herb to pass is if I hang it upside down, do all the herbs stay? And the test has been passed. So here's just an example of what the rosemary herb looks like. And you can actually bundle up with different herbs at the same time. Like for example, if I wanted to take the sage as well as some thyme, I could for sure do that if I wanted to, but I'd like to keep it separate for now, so I know that things are going to dry relatively around the same time. And once again, I'm just going to tie it up. This is a good activity if you have kids who want to help out and their little hands are dexterous enough in order for them to sort of tie it, and they can for sure help out if that's what they want to do, or if that's what you want to do. So here we go. We got some sage now sort of tied up, ready to go, and we have a rosemary tied up, ready to go. So that's just an example of what it will start looking like when you tie up all your herbs. The second thing that we're going to be talking about is the brown paper bag method. So the brown paper bag method is a way in which you can kind of bulk preserve your herbs. So it really is nothing more than just a brown paper bag. And when you put your herbs in a brown paper bag, so for example, I have my mint, I have my thyme, I have a bit of sage, I have a little rosemary. This is some great already marinara that I can start here. All I'm thinking about is there enough airspace and it's not densely packed in the brown paper bag for my herbs to dry out. And once I pack all of this herbs in, then I just want it to be loose flowing, and simply fold the paper bag, and this is ready for hanging. And I'm going to show everyone kind of what does it mean to hang your herbs in the next segment. But with the paper bag method, a lot of this method is used when you have bulkier herbs like chamomile or different flowering herbs that have more space to it, where the bag will be used more for that drying method, and you really don't care about mixing your herbs by this point. So depending on the end goal of your herbs, So if you're drying, let's say chamomile and lemon balm and thistle and mint all together, like that would be a really great tea that you can make at the end of the drying. So all of that would pretty much be mixed up. If you're looking for more of the flavor profiles within a specific herb and you want to use that herb for your recipes, then you're going to be looking at potentially using the string method. And we'll show you what happens next with the string method. Okay, so we are now back in the barn, and depending on what your space looks like will depend on where you potentially could hang and dry your herbs. So the first thing that you want to make sure is that it's not getting any direct sunlight, and it has access to lots of air movement. So if you have the ability to have your herbs between two windows where it's not getting like direct sunlight, then that's potentially a good spot for you. So so we're fortunate enough to have this little beam here that allows us to have the space necessary for our herbs to simply hang appropriately over the beam and not get caught up with anything that's going to kind of like block the airflow that's going to be coming from the windows, so it has the ability to dry out. Now, these herbs will hang anywhere from 3 to like 5 weeks sort of at times, and what I'm going to be looking for when they finally dry out is how sort of crunchy are those leaves. Now I'm not going to be touching those leaves simply because what I told you about the sort of essential oils that we're going to be looking for when we finally harvest our herbs. But the herbs kind of tell you when it's ready to go. Well, you're looking really for that really dry kind of herb that you're going to be using for your cooking. So that's one example that I'm going to show you if you do have the space between windows and the proper airflow. So I'll give you one more example. Okay, so here we simply just have a wall, and we're in our little kind of farm kitchenette here, and it's very simple to just keep it hung up on the wall, and depending on kind of how you actually hang your herb and what your herb is kind of nestled up against. Here we're like lucky enough that our herbs can be nestled against their stem, so that there's still airflow in between the herbs. So that's a very important consideration with your airflow. And then also just thinking about the room that it's in. So if the room gets a lot of humidity, then that's something that you're not wanting to do. You want to make sure that the room that you are putting it in is a dry room, so that the herbs do have the potential of actually drying out. So that's the example of what you need to do to hang your herbs with the string. Now I'll give you an example of what to do with the bag. Okay, so now with your bagged herbs that you're trying to dry out, so the same rules and principles apply with the hanging herbs. You want to make sure that there's not a lot of humidity, there's no direct sunlight, it doesn't get exposed to a lot of moisture. So things like an outdoor patio that is covered, that doesn't get a lot of humidity now, would be perfect. If your garage gets a lot of airflow, that would be perfect. Or even if you have the space within your house and you're looking to dry your herbs, that'd be great too. So again, between the windows, I just took a paper clip, and we have a little nail here that was used for a photo, and we're just going to quickly tie it up, and that's really it. So you just want to make sure that it hangs appropriately, and same as the drying herbs, you want to look at it in anywhere between 3 to 5 weeks, just to see how it's going, make sure that there's no mold growing in there, and then once it actually is ready to go, then you can separate it, especially if you have multiple herbs in there that you can use for teas and tinctures, and not worry about multiple flavors that is being preserved. So that's our lesson today for preserving herbs. Hope you learned something, and see you next week.